when we seeing or hearing something would support the official story, we're allowed to see or hear it. When us seeing something would demolish the official story, we are not allowed to see or hear it. And that's why security cameras are working when they want to catch someone, and they miraculously cease to work when the true story of something like this would happen. How did they do it? Well, I tell you how they didn't do it. People who couldn't fly Cessnas did not fly those planes into buildings with such perfection. This is one flight instructor, about two of them. It was Dumb and Dumber. I mean, they were clueless. It was clear to me they weren't going to make it as pilots. One of them was described as, one of them said, I was surprised he could even drive a car. And there we go. They flew these pilots. These two guys were supposed to be involved. They failed to keep up their flight training, and one of them left for the Yemen for a year. Maybe you learn to fly there, who knows. Mazawi, this guy who's kind of obviously mentally imbalanced, who they've used to highlight the whole thing again in this court case, he was described as a poor pilot who failed to obtain a license despite hours of training. So what did they do, this Al-Qaeda network? They found anyone who had any ability to fly a plane and said, get them, we'll have them. I mean, it's a joke. Arab terrorists were not flying the bloody planes, please. Yes, they were. So, what was going on? Well, first of all, we've got to understand the technology that's available. This is a thing called the Global Hawk. They fly this all over the world without a pilot. It's a surveillance plane. They've flown it from America to Australia, America to Europe. It's flying over Afghanistan and these places now. No pilot. It's controlled from the ground. And when I was researching Alice in Wonderland, I was watching a program in a series. Who's that guy who fronts the car programs? That's him, Jeremy Clarkson. Yeah, him. He started off this explanation of the technology of modern aircraft. And the plane took off at the start of the show, and he's in the cockpit of this jumbo jet, and it's leaving, I think it was Kennedy Airport. And he was showing what actually flies the plane. And the pilot took the plane off the runway, and then he pointed it at the first, I think they call them way stations or something like that, in the sky. There are points in the sky which the computer picks out, and it goes to that one. When it gets there, the computer readjusts and takes it to the next one, flies it over the Atlantic. Once the thing's off the ground, the computer's flying the plane. It comes into Heathrow, and the plane landed, the front wheel was on the bloody white line in the middle, and it applied the brakes, all done by computer. The next thing the pilot did was turn it and taxi it to the bloody gate. Quite simply, if you can get control of the flight management computer system from the ground, you control the bloody plane. Simple as that. And that's what they do with this. And that's what they did, I would suggest, on 9/11. It's this Global Hawk, big thing. It's got the wingspan of a 737. And in the summer of 2001, a book came out by a former investigative producer of ABC, a guy called Bamford. And he was investigating the National Security Agency in America, which is much, much bigger than the CIA, more important. But what he did in his research, he came over this thing called Operation Northwoods, which was 40 years ago, and run by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in other words, the Pentagon. And this is what he found. This was in official documents he came across. They obviously thought were destroyed. Operation Northwoods, the plan called for innocent people to be shot on American streets. This is the Pentagon. For boats carrying refugees fleeing Cuba to be sunk on the high seas. For a wave of violent terrorism to be launched in Washington, D.C., Miami and elsewhere. People would be framed for bombings they did not commit. Planes would be hijacked using phony evidence, all of which would be blamed on Castro to justify an invasion of Cuba 40 years ago. And this is another thing that was in this document. They were going to do this 40 years ago. An aircraft at Elgin Air Force Base would be painted and numbered as an exact duplicate for a civil registered aircraft belonging to a CIA proprietary organization in the Miami area. At a designate time, the duplicate would be substituted for the actual civil aircraft and would be loaded with selected passengers, all boarded under carefully prepared aliases. The actual registered aircraft would be converted into a drone, remote-controlled plane, their word for it. Takeoff times of the drone aircraft and the actual aircraft would be scheduled to allow a rendezvous south of Florida. What it was going on to say was that when the drone aircraft replaced the real aircraft, it would be flown according to its flight plan. That's why they chose that particular route over Cuba, and it would be destroyed by radio-controlled explosion, and it would be blamed on a ground-to-air missile from Cuba, therefore justifying the invasion of Cuba. They had the capability of doing that with a remotely controlled aircraft 40 years before 9/11. Imagine the technology they have now. That's what happened, and this, NORAD, is one of the major organizations that's been involved in the development of remotely controlled aircraft. The black boxes. If us seeing or hearing something would destroy the official story, we don't see or hear it. Where's the black boxes? Oh, they're destroyed, mate. Well, that's funny. It doesn't happen in other cases. The hijackers. 19 hijackers. We don't know who they are. Suddenly, here's the list. Size of shoes. Everything. And you know what they've said? They've just come out and said this. The reason they knew this is because it was all in Mohammed Attar's bag that didn't make it onto Flight 11. The coincidences, that's just amazing. Synchronicity, it must be true. 7 of these people at least have been tracked down by the mainstream press. They're still alive. What do they do, parachute? I mean, what's going on? And then you've got these Korans everywhere. They left them in bars, in bloody hotel rooms and bloody cars. I mean, what were they? The Islamic equivalent of the Gideons? Who were these people? And then I sat in my front room and I watched a newsreader tell me on the BBC without laughing, just a few days after 9/11, that they found a passport from one of the hijackers. I mean, was it singed? I mean, what, you know? I'm not a physics major, but paper passport, I think there's questions to ask here. And I rang the New York police a year later when I was doing the Alice in Wonderland book, and oh no, we can't talk about that, there's an ongoing investigation, oh God. And then there was an ITV television documentary a year after 9/11, and they asked the same question, and the FBI said, the hijacker's passport is a rumor that might be true. This is a year after they've called a press conference to announce it. Why? Because we go back to connecting the dots. They know that vast majority of people do not connect the dots. They don't remember what they were told on this day as opposed to what they were told on this day and this day. And therefore, what they wanted in that period was emphasize, program, yes, it was them Islams, yeah. So we found a passport, proof. Oh, we found a Korans in this, everywhere. Oh, it was them Islams. And then, once the programming is done, they can just walk away, because they know most people won't say, well, hold on a minute. But some people do, and increasing numbers of people do, and that's how the dots get connected. Now, this is extraordinary. This is the official FBI timeline of Mohammed Attar. They said that him and this guy Abdulaziz Al-Amuri, who turned out not to be, actually, instead of being in Boston when they were going to hijack Flight 11 in the morning of September the 11th, they drove down to Portland, Maine the night before. I mean, you know, was it a better hotel? I mean, what's going on? So, and he said that they left their hotel on the morning of September the 11th at 5:33 to catch a plane at 6 o'clock, which is the only one that